There comes a moment, quiet, like the pause between heartbeats, when the soul begins to remember, not with the mind, but with a vibration that trembles through the marrow of your being. If you're here, listening, it's because something inside you has stirred. A knowing, a pulse, a silent recognition that this life, this incarnation, might be your last walk through the corridors of flesh and bone. According to the luminous teachings of Edgar Cayce, each soul journeys through lifetimes, not in punishment, but in refinement. And yet, there are rare moments when a soul reaches its threshold, a final chapter, the culmination of aeons of learning, healing, forgetting, and remembering. If you feel the weight of unseen memories, if the stars seem to call you home, you may be standing at the edge of that sacred threshold. This is not about escaping the world, but transcending its illusions. The soul who is nearing its final human experience often finds that the material begins to dissolve in meaning. Success feels hollow, conflict feels foreign, and love, true expansive love, becomes the only compass that matters. There is a soft detachment, not born of apathy, but of wisdom, of completion. The signs are subtle but undeniable. They are encoded not in prophecy but in presence, not in visions but in vibration. You do not chase them, you become them. A mirror of the infinite, walking softly through the finite, leaving behind nothing but light. If these words have already touched your soul, subscribe to the channel and share in the comments. What vibration are you feeling inside right now? Now, let's continue. You begin to notice a quiet distance between you and the world. Not from sadness or disillusionment, but from a profound knowing that this place, with all its beauty and pain, is not your true home. This is one of the first signs, a soft but undeniable detachment, where ambition no longer seduces and chaos no longer disturbs. Edgar Cayce spoke often of souls who were nearing completion, those who had lived through the many archetypes of existence, warrior, healer, teacher, betrayer, mystic. These souls, having tasted every flavor of human experience, arrive at a place of stillness. Nothing shocks them, nothing owns them. They observe life without grasping for it, without clinging to its fleeting forms. You might find that relationships shift, not because you love less, but because you begin to love differently, from a distance that respects the sacred sovereignty of every soul, the need to control, to be understood, to belong. It fades. What replaces it is peace, spaciousness, silence. This detachment is not escape, it is mastery. You are no longer driven by the echoes of karma or the loops of unresolved desire. You walk slowly, listen deeply, and speak less, not out of fear, but reverence. Everything becomes sacred, even the mundane. And yet, this detachment can be lonely. It is the loneliness of the eagle who flies above the storm, seeing with clarity what others do not. But you are not alone. You are simply remembering. Remembering who you are and why you came. This is the first sign, a soft falling away, of roles, of urgency, of noise. You are being emptied so you can become something vast, something eternal. Something deep within you begins to stir. A magnetic pull, not toward the outside world, but toward the sanctum within. You feel it in quiet moments, in dreams, in sudden waves of emotion that seem to rise from lifetimes ago. It is the second sign, the soul's unshakable call toward truth, not the kind of truth that can be debated or defined, but the kind that dismantles illusions, that strips away identity, belief, and even hope, until only essence remains. This yearning does not come from the intellect, nor from ego's quest for superiority. It emerges from the soul's exhaustion with half-truths, with spiritual theatrics, with the masks of enlightenment. Edgar Cayce revealed that souls nearing the end of their incarnational cycle often experience a deep discontent with external doctrines. They no longer seek teachers to follow, but silence to enter. The sacred becomes simple, meditation becomes breath, God becomes presence. You may find yourself less interested in convincing others and more devoted to embodying what you feel but cannot name. You begin to trust what resonates, not because it's written in scripture, but because it trembles through your bones like an ancient echo. You are no longer reading about light. You are becoming it. This path is not loud. It is not filled with rituals or rewards. It is a path of undoing, of dissolving everything that is not real. It demands honesty, not performance, vulnerability, not perfection. This pull toward inner truth may isolate you at times, but the solitude is not punishment. It is initiation, a return to the temple within, where no words are needed and every moment is a prayer. The second sign has arrived, not with thunder but with stillness. You begin to feel others, not just see or hear them, but feel them, their wounds, their longing, their fear, all pass through you like wind through leaves. This is the third sign, a compassion so vast it transcends judgment, agenda, even personality. When a soul nears the end of its human incarnations, the heart stretches beyond its former shape. It becomes a vessel for something universal, a love that does not depend on agreement, similarity, or history. Edgar Cayce spoke of this as the return to oneness, the soul's remembrance that separation is a mirage sustained by fear and identity. This compassion is not sentimental. It's not about rescuing or fixing. It arises as a spontaneous recognition. They are me. Even those who harm, deceive, or betray, somehow you see their pain beneath the act, their forgotten origin beneath the shadow. And though boundaries remain, blame dissolves. You begin to forgive without effort, to listen without resistance. Even the earth with her trembling ecosystems and suffering creatures becomes your kin. You feel sorrow for what is broken, but not from despair, from reverence. You no longer pity the world. You weep with it. You breathe with it. This form of love is ancient. It has nothing to prove, nothing to gain. It is the soft light that glows from within a soul who has known war, loss, betrayal, ecstasy, and who, after all of it, chooses peace, again and again. The third sign lives in your chest, your eyes, your silence. It speaks without speaking. It is the light that shines through your being not as a display but as a memory. You are not becoming compassionate. You are returning to it. The days begin to blur, not from forgetfulness but from transcendence. Time no longer feels like a sequence but a spiral, folding in, expanding out, revealing glimpses of other lives, other selves. This is the fourth sign, the dissolution of time as a fixed reality within your perception. You may experience déjà vu so profound it feels like memory, not coincidence. Dreams become more vivid, more instructive. You might awaken with the scent of a place you've never visited in this life, or feel emotions that don't belong to your current story. Moments stretch and contract. A minute feels like an hour. A day disappears in silence. Edgar Cayce often channeled visions that described time as a field, not a line. He said the soul journeys outside of time, dipping in and out of incarnations like threads in a tapestry. For a soul nearing its final human life, the veil begins to lift. What was once hidden behind chronology becomes visible in stillness. You may find yourself grieving without cause, or smiling at something unspoken. You may meet strangers who feel like kin, or recognize places you've never walked. These are not fantasies. They are fragments of your soul's vast terrain, resurfacing as the final pieces integrate. Time loses its grip because karma unravels. You are no longer bound to the wheel, and so the wheel no longer defines you. You become present, not in the trendy sense, but as a dimensionless awareness that lives outside the ticking clock. The fourth sign is subtle, but irreversible. Once seen, you cannot return to linearity. You live in the eternal now, where all lives converge and all truths echo in stillness. You begin to sense the silent impact of your presence, not just in action, but in frequency. Every thought, every word, every unspoken emotion carries a charge, a ripple. This is the fifth sign, a sacred awareness of your vibration and a responsibility that goes far beyond morality. It is no longer enough to act kindly. You begin to become kindness, not for appearances, not for approval, but because you can no longer bear to pollute the field with anything that diminishes the whole. Edgar Cayce spoke of vibrational law, a divine architecture where each soul contributes to the harmonic or dissonant frequency of the collective. You start noticing how your state of being affects everything, how rooms change when you enter them, how silence deepens or shrinks depending on your inner field. You feel the consequences of even the subtlest emotional contractions, resentment, judgment, fear, as if your soul were allergic to misalignment, and so you recalibrate constantly, not from guilt, but from devotion. You meditate not to escape, but to cleanse. You speak less to preserve energy. You eat, breathe, move, and love with intention. Life becomes alchemical. Every moment, a chance to return to coherence. This responsibility is not heavy, it is holy. You realize that your vibration is your legacy, not what you build or leave behind, but the energetic imprint you ripple into the unseen. You become a tuning fork, harmonizing spaces simply by being. The fifth sign is a shift from reaction to resonance. You no longer strive to be right, only to be true. The frequency you hold becomes your offering, and slowly the world around you begins to respond in kind. There comes a moment when death no longer frightens you, not because you understand it fully, but because some inner veil has lifted, and what was once an end now feels like a doorway. This is the sixth sign, the quiet dissolving of the fear of death. This shift doesn't arise from logic or belief. It is not the product of dogma or doctrine. It comes like a wave of memory, subtle and pure. You simply remember that you have died before, many times, and yet, here you are. Edgar Cayce referred to death as a transition, not a termination, a return to source, a continuation of learning in another octave of experience. For souls approaching their final incarnation, death begins to lose its edges. It no longer holds drama. It no longer defines urgency. You begin to live through death as if it were already behind you. You may find yourself contemplating impermanence, not with anxiety, but with reverence. You notice how leaves fall, how breath fades, how waves rise and disappear, and you smile. Not because you are immune to grief, but because you have befriended it. You recognize endings as sacred thresholds, not failures. This freedom from fear changes everything. You stop rushing. You stop pretending. You begin to choose experiences based on resonance, not survival. Life becomes richer, slower, deeper, because you are no longer trying to outrun its end. The sixth sign whispers, not shouts. It rests in the way you hold a dying flower, the way you comfort a loved one, the way you sit in the dark without trembling. You become a bridge between dimensions, one foot in time, the other in the eternal. Death now is no longer an exit, it is simply a return. Control begins to lose its grip. You no longer fight the current, no longer demand answers, no longer resist what unfolds. This is the seventh and final sign, a profound surrender to the flow, not out of defeat, but from an unshakable trust in the intelligence of the unseen. You notice how life breathes through you, how each moment contains exactly what is needed, no more, no less. There is no longer urgency to force outcomes, to manipulate timing, to perfect every step. You begin to allow, and in that allowing, you touch the very pulse of creation. Edgar Cayce spoke often of surrender as alignment, not passivity, but co-creation with the divine. When the soul approaches its final human chapter, the ego softens. Not because it is destroyed, but because it finally understands its role. The soul begins to lead and life begins to orchestrate with grace. You may find yourself guided in unexpected ways. Synchronicities increase, doors open without knocking. People enter your life like echoes of a forgotten promise, and rather than question it all, you breathe and receive. You trust that what comes is meant, and what leaves was never truly yours. Surrender does not mean absence of action. It means aligned action. It means moving when the heart stirs, speaking when silence has ripened into truth. It means letting go of timing, attachment, and fear. You become the river, not the dam. This seventh sign is perhaps the most liberating. Because in surrender, all the others awaken more fully. Compassion deepens, time dissolves, truth sharpens, vibration elevates. And in that sacred trust, You become what you always were, a soul remembering its path home. Without knowing why, you begin to tidy your life, not just your surroundings, but your soul. There is a soft instinct to simplify, to release, to complete. Conversations once avoided now find closure. Objects once clung to now seem weightless. This is not melancholy, it is preparation. The eighth sign, a gentle readiness to return. You are not dying, you are aligning. Something deep within senses the nearing of a threshold, not necessarily a physical death, but of a soul-level transition. You feel it in your bones, in the sky, in the stillness between moments, a sense that you are finishing what you came to do. Edgar Cayce described souls who, nearing their final incarnations, began to live with a quiet awareness of completion. They felt the need to make peace, not only with others but with themselves. Regret softens, blame fades. Forgiveness arises like spring water from deep within. You may feel drawn to speak your truth, to bless what once broke you, to gather the threads of your life into a final, luminous weave. Not out of drama or urgency, but reverence. This is the sacred harvest, a clearing of karma, a blessing of the path you've walked. You notice how little you truly need. Simplicity becomes sacred. Relationships become more honest. You release with love, not bitterness. Each goodbye feels holy. Each moment, a closing petal in a blooming rose that has given all its fragrance to the world. This preparation is not an ending. It is a blooming inward, a return to center, a remembering of the formless self that never left the source. And as you prepare, the light grows inside you. Quiet, constant, eternal. You no longer seek, you simply are. Wisdom flows through your silence. Peace radiates from your presence. Without effort, without performance, your very existence becomes a light for others. This is the ninth and final sign. You become the teacher, not of knowledge but of being. Edgar Cayce often said that the most awakened souls teach not through words, but through frequency. They move through life with the grace of one who has nothing to prove, nothing to fix, and everything to offer, through stillness, kindness, and unwavering truth. You become a mirror for others to remember themselves. People begin to confide in you. Strangers are drawn to your energy. You may notice that animals, children, even the wind seem to respond to you with trust. But you do not claim this as power. You understand it is not you they feel. It is the light within you that now shines unobstructed. You don't need recognition. You don't need titles. Your teachings arrive in how you listen, how you forgive, how you pause before reacting. Life becomes your message, each breath a blessing, each gesture a transmission. You become the calm in the storm, the soft voice in a loud world. You carry stillness like a lantern through the darkness, not to save others, but to remind them that they were never lost. You are no longer a seeker. You are the sacred found. And now, as this journey nears its completion, you sense what lies beyond. Not answers, but expansion. Not heavens, but wholeness. The soul is ready, not to escape, but to return. With gratitude, with love. If these words have already touched your soul, subscribe to the channel and share in the comments. What vibration do you feel within you now? And remember, this journey never truly ends. It only deepens.